She was mocked as just a paper pilot until 5 enemy jets vanished from the sky in under 16 minutes. When the squadron froze, she flew. Alone, unapproved, and unstoppable. Welcome to my channel. They always laughed when I walked into the briefing room. Not the haha kind of laugh. The kind where nobody's actually smiling. The kind that wraps around a throat and squeezes until you're half convinced they're right about you. My name's Natalie Cross, call sign Blue Jay, age 29, and I knew more about aerial combat than any of the pilots in that room. Not because I had flown more missions, because I had studied more than they ever would. Simulations, war games, enemy patterns. I had dissected flight combat the way a surgeon studies anatomy. Precision, memory, hours of study and repetition that no real sky could erase. But at Mesa Range Air Station, none of that mattered. Mesa was stuck in the past. If you didn't have combat hours next to your name, you were a theory junkie, a desk flyer, a glorified intern with wings. That morning, the squadron leader, Colonel Barrett, stood in front of the room with his arms crossed and a smirk that could slice through armor. Cross, you're on radar watch. Let the real pilots handle the sky today. Every other name on the whiteboard was paired with a jet. Mine, slashed out in red like a mistake someone couldn't quite erase. I stood alone after the others filed out. The faint scent of machine oil and burnt coffee lingered in the air. My tablet sat on the table, glowing with the same report I'd tried, desperately, to present the day before. 26 pages of tactical foresight, compiled over 3 sleepless nights. It detailed an enemy maneuver pattern through Sector 9 Lima that no one seemed to notice. A blind spot in our standard patrol route. Vulnerable to jamming. Open to ambush. I flagged it, highlighted it, even proposed a new intercept corridor. They'd crumpled it up and tossed it in the recycling bin next to the vending machine. Because I hadn't been shot at yet. Because I didn't know how it feels out there. I watched the flight deck from the glass panels of the command center, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt regret. The jets were taxiing out. 6 F-16s, 2 Raptors, all flown by the boys' club that made up Task Squadron Echo. Captain Danny Voss, Barrett's golden boy, flashed a thumbs up through the cockpit window. His voice came through the comms a moment later. Hey, Blue Jay, got your crayons ready? I'll draw you a picture if the sky gets too complicated. Laughter erupted across the channel. It wasn't cruel. It was worse, dismissive. I turned back to my screen. 8 green markers on radar. Textbook formation. Smooth vector toward grid point Bravo 11. But they were flying into the mouth of the thing I'd tried to warn them about. The chatter on the open channel was light. Confident. Skies clear. Nothing on radar. No bogeys. Then something flickered. A small, red signature ghosted across my scope. Then another. The pattern clicked in my head like a loaded chamber. I grabbed the comm switch. Command to Echo Flight. Recommend immediate course correction. Multiple unidentified contacts converging from northwest vector using terrain masking. ECM suspected. Static. Then Barrett's voice, dry and dismissive. Cross. Maintain radio protocol. We're not running simulator drills today. Sir, this is real time. They're flying into a. End of discussion. Get off our channel. And just like that, they went silent. I watched the blips converge. Radar stuttered. Comms bled static. My coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered across the floor. The enemy came fast. Invisible to radar. But not to me. Because I'd seen it before. Every move, every angle. Not in the sky, but in the sims. In the plans. On paper. Paper that now lay balled up in a trash can behind the vending machine. I reached for the emergency phone. The last friendly contact blinked. 6 green dots gone. 2 remained. They were flying blind now. Jammed, hunted alone. And 1 plane remained fueled on the reserve pad. A backup F-15 Strike Eagle. 1 seat. 1 pilot. I didn't hesitate. Helmet. Tablet. Access code burned into muscle memory. I was down the stairs and across the tarmac before anyone noticed I was gone. The aircraft hissed like a sleeping beast as I climbed in. The engine started with a roar that turned heads all across the hangar. Unidentified aircraft on Pad 3. Respond. I keyed the mic. Lieutenant Natalie Cross. Authorization Echo 12-7. Initiating emergency combat response protocol. You're not cleared for flight, Cross. Stand down. That's a direct order. But I'd learned something that morning. When you're the only one who sees the fire coming, Sometimes the only permission you need is your own. I rolled onto the runway, engine screaming, heart silent. The horizon opened wide, and I took off into a sky full of ghosts, smoke, and unspoken truths. Time to write my own orders. The afterburners kicked like a steel boot to the chest as I climbed past 20,000 feet, slicing through the haze above Mesa Ridge. Below me, the last known location of Echo Squadron blinked like a ghost story no one believed in until it came knocking. Inside the cockpit, everything was instinct. Throttle steady, avionics humming. Radar, clear for now. I pulled up the suppressed flight plan from my tablet, the one I'd built off intel reports the others ignored. Enemy vectors, predicted jamming zones. It all unfolded on the screen like prophecy in real time. I switched to an encrypted emergency frequency. My headset crackled. Faint voices. Desperate ones. Tiger 2 is hit. Smoke in the cockpit. Can't see. Targeting's dead. I repeat, they've fried the whole package. Where the hell are they? They're invisible. Then I heard him. Voss. Echo Base, we need backup. Anyone. Now. No smugness in his voice this time. Just panic. I flipped to open comms. Echo Flight, this is Blue Jay. I have visual on your sector. 5 hostiles confirmed. Engaging now. Silence. Then. Blue Jay? Cross. What are you flying? Something with a little bite. I muttered, leveling off into a tight vector. The Strike Eagle shuddered as I lined up on the first hostile. They hadn't seen me yet. That was their first mistake. The bandits flew in staggered formation, textbook suppression pattern designed to exploit our radar blind spots. But I hadn't come blind. I came ready. I locked onto the lead contact, thumb hovering over the trigger. The HUD flickered green. Solid lock. Fox 3. The missile streaked ahead, a blur of smoke and vengeance. Impact. The sky flashed orange as debris scattered like confetti over the desert. The enemy formation broke. For left. But now they knew I was here. They turned as one. Tight arc, sharp angles, sudden aggression. Good. Let them come. I rolled into a high-speed dive, dragging them low into the terrain. My eagle's wings flexed, air screaming past the canopy. Below me, a canyon opened like the throat of a trap. I let the jet skim the rim, dust spiraling in my wake. They followed. I counted seconds in my head. I knew their specs, knew their max velocity in atmosphere, knew how tight they could turn without blacking out. I also knew they'd be 3 seconds too late. I climbed hard. The eagle groaned under the GS, but she held. The first bandit pulled up, too slow. He clipped the canyon wall, erupted in fire. 3 left. Who the hell is flying that thing? Someone barked over open comms. I didn't answer. I turned back into the fight. The second and third enemy fighters bracketed me, one above, one behind. Classic pincer. Classic mistake. I inverted, cut power, let gravity do the work. The fighter above overshot. I punched throttle again, spun, and let the nose of my jet chase his retreating fuselage. Locked. Fox 2. Infrared missile. Straight into his engines. 2 left. The last 2 got smarter. Broke formation. Tried to flank wide. But I had the data. I'd already run this pattern in my head a dozen times. I turned into the valley again, lured one low, then looped high and caught him in a head-on pass. I fired early, just one burst. Cannon fire stitched across his wing. He spiraled. Smoke. Explosion. 1 left. He ran. He ran like hell. I let him. Not because I was merciful, but because I needed him to lead me home. As the last fighter banked hard east, he made the same mistake I'd seen in every sim. The same one that inspired my original plan. He tried to run high and fast, but ECM cut his comms. He couldn't call for help. Couldn't cloak. He was naked, and I was done waiting. Fox 3. Missile. Contact. Gone. 5 enemy fighters. All down. In under 16 minutes. I switched back to open comms. Echo Base, this is Blue Jay. Threat neutralized. Airspace is clear. For a moment, nothing. Then a voice I hadn't expected, Colonel Barrett. Confirm? Say again, Cross. 5 hostiles. All accounted for. You're safe to breathe again. Another pause. Then Voss, quieter than I'd ever heard him. Blue Jay, you just saved our asses. I didn't respond. I just turned the eagle toward home. As I passed over the ridge, I caught sight of the debris fields below. Cratered sand. Trails of smoke. The lingering ghosts of combat no one wanted to admit they'd lost before it even began. The rest of Echo Squadron was limping back. 2 jets badly damaged. 1 missing an entire wing. And me? Not a scratch. Because I'd already fought this battle before. On paper. They call me Paper Pilot like it was a joke. But paper doesn't forget. And today, it didn't forgive. The Eagle's landing gear kissed the tarmac like it was coming home. I slowed the jet to taxi, rolled toward the hangar, and saw it. Half the base standing outside, squinting into the desert glare like they were seeing a ghost. No applause. No salutes. Just silence. The kind that wraps around your neck and waits to see if you're going to choke or breathe. I cut the engines. The air was thick with dust and disbelief. As I climbed down from the cockpit, helmet under my arm, I saw Colonel Barrett push through the crowd. His flight suit was unzipped, sleeves rolled up, eyes hollow like someone who'd just walked out of a bad dream. Behind him were the surviving pilots, some limping, some bruised, all quiet. "You disobeyed a direct order," he said flatly. I dropped my helmet onto the tarmac. "And I saved your squadron." He didn't argue, just stared at me like I was a puzzle piece someone had jammed into the wrong spot and suddenly realized it fit perfectly. Then someone jogged up behind him, Commander Reyes, head of base operations, carrying a tablet in one hand and a folder in the other. "Colonel," she said breathlessly, "she's right. Satellite recon just confirmed her enemy movement prediction. Matches her submitted analysis." "Exactly." Barrett didn't look at her. His eyes were still on me. "That report you threw out." I added calmly. "Page 16. Terrain vectors. Jamming patterns. Enemy flight arcs." He said nothing, just exhaled through his nose like a man trying not to lose the last grip on control he had. Then, behind him, Voss stepped forward. His shoulder was wrapped in gauze. His eyes met mine, and for the first time since I'd met him, there was no smirk. Just something raw. Something real. "Blue Jay," he said, voice rough. "That was the cleanest engagement I've ever seen. I'm alive because of you." The crowd was listening now. Techs, ground crew, officers. People who hadn't even looked me in the eye 3 days ago. Commander Reyes turned to Barrett. "Sir, I recommend immediate review of Lieutenant Cross's tactical materials. If she hadn't acted, we'd be organizing memorials." That got a murmur. Barrett nodded slowly, as if the weight of it all was finally settling on his shoulders. Then he said something I never expected. "You were right." The words were soft, humble, maybe even ashamed. "But you still disobeyed a direct order." I stepped in. "I followed the mission." "You followed your own interpretation." "No," I said. "I followed the data. The enemy used patterns we've ignored for years because they didn't fit textbook doctrine. You tossed out analysis that could have saved lives without even reading it. I didn't fly because I wanted glory. I flew because I was the only one left who could." Silence again. Then Barrett turned to the rest of the gathered personnel. "Effective immediately," he said, voice louder now. "All submitted tactical proposals will be reviewed by a standing committee, regardless of rank or experience level." He looked back at me. "And Lieutenant Cross will be heading that committee." There it was. Not applause, not celebration, but something better, respect. Commander Reyes handed me my own file, the one I'd written and rewritten over 3 nights without sleep. "I want you to brief this to every squadron lead on base," she said. "Starting tonight." I nodded. Then someone in the crowd started clapping. One tech, then another, then a few more. Not for show, not for drama, for vindication, for someone who saw it coming when no one else would. I walked off the tarmac, feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Not pride, purpose. Later that evening, I sat alone in the debrief chamber. The air was thick with the hum of fluorescent lights and the stale smell of old coffee and fresh sweat. A projector screen glowed behind me, paused on a still frame. Enemy aircraft caught in the instant before missile impact. I'd seen it 100 times already. And still, I watched it again. The door creaked open behind me. I didn't look up. "Come to tell me I'm grounded again, Colonel?" I asked dryly. Barrett stepped in. Alone this time. No clipboard, no bluster. "No," he said. "I came to ask how you saw it coming." That surprised me. I gestured to the chair across from mine. He sat, slowly, like a man carrying weight not measured in pounds. I pulled up the simulation overlay, showed him the satellite thermal patterns, the radar disruption fields, the signal scatter reports. Then I opened the last file, the one I'd flagged in bold red 3 days earlier. "This was the signature," I said. Pattern matches from 2 archived joint force engagements in Eastern Europe. Both dismissed as exercises gone wrong. But the jamming fields were nearly identical. Barrett squinted at the screen. I missed that, he muttered. I didn't say anything. He leaned back. You know, when I was your age, I flew with a guy named Kincaid. Smartest guy in the squadron. Knew every enemy spec by heart. Could outthink anyone in the sky. But he got passed over. Again and again. Because he didn't play the part. I raised an eyebrow. What part's that? The one that makes people feel safe. Comfortable. Like experience always outranks insight. I leaned forward, folding my hands. People trust what they've survived. It makes sense. But sometimes surviving just means you got lucky last time. Doesn't mean you'll get lucky again. He nodded slowly. Then looked me in the eye. You didn't just survive. You saw the whole board. Before anyone else sat down to play. A pause. I was wrong about you. There it was. The closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. I didn't need more. Don't be sorry, I said. Just don't ignore the next Blue Jay that walks into your squad room with a warning and a plan. Barrett cracked a ghost of a smile. Deal. He stood. Then, before leaving, he turned at the doorway. They're already talking about naming your maneuver protocol, he said. Upstairs. Strategic Command wants it rolled out to other bases. I blinked. What are they calling it? He smirked. Doesn't matter. Everyone here already knows it as the Blue Jay run. I watched him go. The door clicked shut behind him. I exhaled, and then I opened a new file. Engagement debrief. Mesa incident, Sector 9 Lima. Because someone had to put the truth on paper. And now, they were finally reading. By the end of the week, the entire base was buzzing with a word I hadn't heard in years. Protocol. They were calling it Blue Jay Protocol officially now, though not everyone said it like it was a compliment. Some said it with respect. Some with irritation. Some, like I'd lit a match under their chairs and dared them to move. I didn't care either way. I wasn't doing this for legacy. I was doing it because I'd seen what happened when insight got buried under egos. And I was never letting that happen again. 3 days after the engagement, I got summoned. Not by Barrett. Not by Reyes. This time, the summons came with a different kind of seal. Defense Strategic Operations Command. Washington, D.C. They sent a blacked-out military jet. No tail number. No insignia. Inside, a man in a civilian suit with a face like a closed file handed me a folder. Your debriefing points. Read them twice. Speak only from them. Don't improvise. I didn't ask his name. Didn't need to. When you're handed a gag order folder, names don't matter. Authority does. The building we landed at didn't have a name either. Just layers of fences and security scans that felt more like a spaceport than a Pentagon annex. They ushered me into a conference room with 7 people. 3 military. For civilians. 1 with a defense contractor badge that probably cost more than my annual salary. The man at the center, a gray-haired general with eyes like flint, spoke first. You're Lieutenant Cross. Yes, sir. You took off without authorization. Engaged in combat without command oversight. Bypassed protocol. And in doing so, eliminated 5 hostile aircraft, preserved an entire squadron, and exposed a coordinated ECM strike we weren't even aware of. Correct, I said. He studied me. How? I read the signs, I said. Did the work no one wanted to do. And when they ignored me, I followed the data, not the chain of command. A younger analyst across the table, a guy with wireframe glasses and a tablet the size of a cutting board, snorted. So what you're saying is, we're supposed to rewrite operational doctrine because 1 lieutenant ran off script and got lucky. I leaned forward, voice steady. Luck doesn't give you a 5-4-0 kill ratio against 5th-gen enemy fighters in an ECM contested sky. What gives you that is knowledge. Preparation. And a system that trusted me just enough not to shoot me down before I proved them all wrong. The older general raised a hand. Enough. Then he pointed at me. We're elevating your protocol. Strategically. Quietly. You'll consult directly with TACOM on further simulation redesign and real-world scenario testing. The analyst looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Effective immediately, the general continued. You are reassigned to Langley Flight Tactics Division as a senior tactical strategist. Promotion recommendation to captain pending review. You'll retain your call sign and full flight privileges. A pause. And unofficially, he said, locking eyes with me. We want to know how many other lieutenants like you we've ignored. That was the moment it sank in. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about everyone who had been mocked, dismissed, buried in the back row of every mission brief because their name wasn't followed by a combat medal. And now, one of us had cracked the damn sky open. When the meeting ended, they offered me a car. I turned it down. I walked the half-mile back to the barracks with the wind in my face and the noise of jet engines in the distance. They call me a paper pilot. But paper doesn't burn when it's the match. Back at Mesa Range, things weren't quiet. Word had spread faster than any memo. By the time I touched down again at base, it was like someone had flipped a switch. The salutes came quicker. The side-eye glances slower. The jokes gone completely. But I didn't come back to bask in it. I came back for my things. Barrett met me at Hangar 6. He looked tired. Not just in the face. In the bones. Didn't think we'd see you back this quick, he said. Just for a day, I replied. Packing out. Heading east. He nodded. Langley. Yeah, they want my brain. Not sure if they want the rest of me. Barrett chuckled, almost bitterly. They'll figure it out the same way I did. I opened the hangar locker. Pulled out my duffel. Inside, one extra flight suit, 2 pairs of boots, my old hard drive with every flight sim I'd ever run. And at the bottom, a crumpled printout, Protocol Echo Delta 9. My original plan. The one they'd tossed. I smoothed it out. Folded it neatly. Slipped it into the bag. Behind me, footsteps approached. It was Captain Danny Voss. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. You headed out? He asked. Orders came through yesterday. He nodded, scuffed his boot against the floor. I reviewed your report, he said. All of it. The layers, the way you read the ECM distortion signatures, the predictive angle of approach modeling. Hell, Cross, I didn't even know half of that was possible. Didn't you say I should stick to video games? Voss winced. Yeah, that was ignorant. I thought hours in the cockpit were all that mattered. But you had the hours, too, just stacked differently. In Sims. In theory, you weren't a desk flyer. You were a loaded gun waiting for someone to notice. I zipped my bag. Some of us don't have the luxury of waiting. He nodded. You left widows behind, he said quietly. That's what they're calling you now. I've heard, I said. It's morbid. It's respect. He held out a small patch. My call sign, stitched in black and blue thread. But now beneath it, in bold block letters, Widowmark. New protocol name just got approved, he said. Blue Jay protocol's too soft for what you pulled off. Widowmark fits better. Not just what you did, but how clean it was. I stared at the patch for a long moment. Then took it. Tell the next girl who walks in here to bring her own binder, I said. But also tell her to be ready for a fight. Nothing comes easy on the first lap. He smiled. This time, it wasn't forced. Already printed off your engagement breakdown. I'm building new training around it. Every rookie will walk through that canyon in VR before they even touch a real throttle. Good, I said. That canyon's a graveyard if you don't respect it. As I stepped out into the desert sun, I looked back one last time. Not at the hangar. Not at Voss or Barrett. But at the jet I'd flown. The F-15 still sat there, gleaming like it had something left to say. She'd carried me through fire and ghosts and the grave silence of being right when no one listens. And she'd brought me home. 3 weeks after I landed in Langley, they issued a mandatory directive. Tactical Review 4876, AV, designation, Widowmark Protocol. Every active duty pilot, every tactical officer, every strategy team across the country got the same email. Buried in the fine print. Author, Captain Eliza Cross. Call sign, Blue Jay. I didn't ask for the promotion. Didn't even know it had gone through. One day I was a lieutenant with a bag full of warnings, and the next I had a new office with reinforced glass and a coffee machine that actually worked. Langley was a different world. Clean corridors. Quiet rooms. Big glass screens filled with war games and real-time ops. They didn't laugh at simulations here. They studied them like scripture. And suddenly, everyone wanted to study mine. They started calling me into briefings. First as a consultant, then as a lead. And that's when it started. The resistance. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. Tactical. An older general sliding my report to the bottom of the deck. A flight instructor smirking when I corrected his engagement assumptions. A weapons officer at Wright-Patterson referring to me as the theory girl during a classified scenario review. Same old game. Just higher stakes. But the numbers didn't lie. Engagements improved. Kill/death ratios climbed. Rookie survivability up 43%. Mid-air response to ECM jamming? Doubled. The Widowmark protocol was changing the game, even when some wanted to pretend it wasn't. One night, I sat alone in the Langley sim room, lights dimmed, running canyon engagements for the 7th time that week. A young lieutenant I didn't recognize came in, must have been fresh out of Nellis. "Captain Cross?" he asked, standing awkwardly at attention. I nodded. At ease. He stepped forward, hesitant. I just finished the Widowmark brief. Watched the gun cam footage. The part where you pulled out of the canyon climb? I thought that was an animation at first. It wasn't, I said. Real GS, real sweat, real fear. He looked down, then back up. I just wanted to say thanks. My cousin was Tiger 4. He didn't make it. But my brother flies now. He trains with your protocol. Says it's the first time he feels like he actually understands how to fight, not just how to fly. That hit harder than anything anyone in a uniform had ever said to me. I didn't say much. Just nodded. But after he left, I stayed in that chair for a long time, thinking about the lives that report had saved, the ones it hadn't, the ones it might, and about how a plan in the trash had become a Bible for pilots who hadn't even been born when the war game started. Sometimes victory isn't medals or fanfare. Sometimes it's a quiet acknowledgement from someone who knows the cost. Barrett called me out of the blue. "Langley treating you like royalty yet?" he asked. "More like a puzzle they don't want to admit they need help solving," I replied. He chuckled. "Still you then?" Then he got quiet. "Voss transferred. Took a desk job out west. Says flying doesn't hit the same anymore." I wasn't surprised. It's hard to climb back in the cockpit when your own certainty almost got you killed. "Hayes didn't make it," Barrett added after a pause. I froze. Internal damage from the ejection. He made it home, but not for long. There it was, the cost. They'd mocked me, ignored me, but I never wanted them dead. Just willing to listen. "Why are you really calling?" I asked. Barrett exhaled. "They want you to tour the academy. Guest lecture. Maybe even teach." "You volunteering me?" "I'm warning you." I leaned back in my chair, watching a silent feed of new recruits fumbling through a canyon run. They were better than we'd been. And that was the point. When, next week, you'll have an audience of kids who think Blue Jay is a superhero. Don't let them forget you were once the one in the back row no one heard. That struck deeper than I expected. I didn't want to be a symbol. I wanted to be a signal. That paper pilots weren't soft. That theory wasn't a crutch. That sometimes, the one person who knows what's coming isn't wearing stars, but stripes and a quiet kind of fury. "All right," I said. "I'll teach." The classroom smelled like every other briefing room I'd ever sat in. Coffee, burn electronics, and nerves. 30 cadets. Flight suits crisp. Eyes sharp. Most couldn't have been older than 23. I opened with the canyon run. Played the gun camera footage on the screen. My voice quiet, steady. That was 3 missiles, 2 ECM-locked targets, and 5 seconds to choose whether I lived or died. No one moved. I didn't need to impress them. I needed them to understand. These weren't guesses. These were rehearsed moves. I'd flown this scenario 200 times before it ever happened. A hand went up. "Ma'am, what if we don't get that chance? What if we're ordered into something blind?" I nodded. "Then you bring your own light." Another voice. "Were you scared?" I thought about it. Yes, but not for myself. I was scared for every one of them who'd put their lives in the hands of a plan that didn't exist. After class, one cadet stayed behind. Short, quiet, wore her helmet clipped to her thigh like it was a shield. "Lieutenant Arya Kim," she said. "Top sim scores. 0 flight hours." I smiled. "Sounds familiar." She hesitated. "They call me Game Girl. Think I'm soft." "They'll stop calling you that," I said. "After the first time you see something they don't. And if they don't listen?" I looked her dead in the eye. "Then you fly anyway. And make them listen after." They still call me Blue Jay. Not because of how I fly, but because I saw the storm before it came. The Widowmark protocol's on every squadron server now. It's no longer a briefing buried under coffee cups and sarcasm. It's doctrine. Not because I fought for attention, but because I refused to let silence become surrender. I get mail sometimes. Real letters. Pilots from bases I've never visited. One from Okinawa said, "I flew your canyon. I lived because of it." I keep those letters in a box. Not for pride. For proof. That paper matters. That analysis matters. That some battles are won by the first person who stays up at 2 a.m. staring at red vectors on a blue screen saying, "This doesn't feel right." They asked me once, in a closed-door committee meeting, what I'd do differently if I could go back. I told them this. I'd still speak up. I'd still fly. But this time, I'd bring copies of my plan. 10 of them. Folded. Labeled. Hand-delivered. And if they laughed again, I'd tape one to the canopy of my jet before I launched. So they'd know exactly what saved them. Barrett visits sometimes. Still quiet. Still wrestling with the weight of what almost was. He never says the words. He doesn't need to. The silence between us has changed. It's not doubt anymore. It's respect. They say I wrote the future before it happened. Maybe. But I didn't do it to be right. I did it because I couldn't afford to be wrong. So here's what I leave behind. A tactical protocol. A change doctrine. And the proof that sometimes the ones called soft are the hardest steel you've got. Because flying isn't just guts. It's knowing when the sky lies. And having the courage to rewrite the flight path anyway. So yeah, call me Blue Jay. Call me Widow. Call me paper pilot if you want. But just know, paper doesn't break under fire. It flies.